It's me, the little voice in your stomach. And as you can tell by my musical selection, I have impeccable taste. So I won't settle for anything but the most tasty snack. All natural Alberto beef jerky. It's lean beef, slow cooked, and seasoned to perfection. All natural and all delicious. So listen to the little voice in your stomach. Indulge my great taste and feed me some all natural Alberto beef jerky. Alberto beef jerky. You get out what you put in.
Refers to Alberto's all natural line of beef jerkies. Minimally processed, no artificial ingredients.
This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A.
Happy hump day, everybody. It is a Wednesday. Hot summer day. Dave Rothenberg in for Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN app. Last we spoke, we wondered about the Yankees and their bullpen and their starting rotation and what they'll do at third base and maybe a little bit of first base. And, well, the Yankees have gone ahead and answered a lot of those questions since we were last on the air with you here on ESPN Radio. I'm watching the Yankees game last night, and there starts to be a buzz across social media that the Yankees are on the verge of getting Todd Frazier, David Robertson, and Tommy Kahnle. And by the end of the night, that trade is official, and that's what the Yankees acquire. So a lot of good news in Yankees land. And this just goes to show you the way sports moves so quickly, guys. Doesn't it? Like there's this real concern, and things are not going well, and they've been playing horrible baseball. And I still think there's reason to be concerned about what they are right now. But they go out, they're trailing 3-1. I mean, they're 2 inches away from being down 4-1. Cologne is somehow miraculously shutting down the Yankees. They get to Cologne, Judge with a big hit. They get Sanchez with a big hit. Yankees take a 6-3 lead. They win that game 6-3. And then when the game ends, it becomes official. So the Yankees add, and we'll open it up to you guys. Here's the thing, 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. And I know there's a matinee game out in Minnesota starting in a couple of minutes, but I want to jump off with the Yankees here. And we'll get into a little bit of the Knicks and Carmelo Anthony and some things that he said. And ESPN.com is a very interesting list, which we will get into a little bit later. And Ed Orgeron, I'm not exaggerating. If you asked me, most interesting coaches in all of college football that you would like to speak with, Orgeron is absolutely top 5. I think Jim Harbaugh would be there. I think Urban Meyer would be there. I think Nick Saban would be there. And I think Ed Orgeron would be there. And Ed Orgeron will join us at 2:15 Eastern, 866-ESPN. So, Yankees, and here's the thing. I can't imagine that there's a Yankees fan right now that would look at this trade and have one iota of negativity, because you gained important pieces, and what you traded is not going to be relevant probably for, 2-3 years. So you add Frazier, and granted he's not having a very good year right now. He's hitting, I think, a little over 200, but he does have power, and he is a good defensive third baseman. And if you need to play him at first, you can. If you need to even play him in the outfield, he's capable of that. He can DH, so it adds depth, and he's a power guy. Instead of Headley, who, let's be honest, struggles mightily, Frazier's an upgrade over that. So you get Frazier, I think you're happy there. Robertson. So now when you start to think, now we thought this prior to the trade for Robertson and Kahnle as well. When you look at the Yankees bullpen, on paper, it's a top 3 bullpen in baseball. And I guess what Cashman and Girardi and the Steinbrenners and the brass with the Yankees decided is, what we saw 2 years ago in Kansas City was they had good starting pitching and they had a lethal bullpen. And that's now what the Yankees have gone out and done. Because now it's Chapman and Betances and Warren and Robertson and Kahnle. And it's not a rent-a-player with Robertson because he's locked in for next year as well. To be honest with you, I don't know how, unless you're like in the Blake Rutherford fan club, who obviously has potential, and so does Ian Clark. And I think you got to be honest that the Yankees are clearly a better team today than they were yesterday. And I don't know that it unequivocally puts them into, they're going to absolutely be a playoff caliber club, but they're better. And their bullpen is now built to, how many today? Chapman can't pitch today. Chapman's unavailable today. So then you look, you say, well, Betances moves into the closer's role and my bullpen shrinks. Well, now with Robertson, you've got 3 guys. I mean, in a perfect world, What you have now, if you're the Yankees, is 7, 8, and 9. And Canley, who you don't know much about, is having a terrific season on top of a terrific season last year. Last year, he had an ERA of 2.63. This year, his ERA is 2.5. His 15 Ks to 9 innings pitched, right? And his K to walk ratio is almost 9. So the guy is tremendous. So when you look at what the Yankees are, if they're capable of getting, pedestrian starting pitching, now, they may not be. I still think there have to be more moves. Like, you can't convince me that the Yankees starting pitching is good enough. Is it serviceable? Yeah. Severino, has he been great? He's been sensational. Really, he has been. But now you lose Pineda. So now I have to deal with Sessa, and now I have to deal with Mitchell, and those guys worry me. So I still think the Yankees are in the market for at least one, if not more, starting pitchers. But what they have now said is, if we can get 5 or 6 innings of 3-run ball, what the Yankees should be is that if they go into the 7th inning in a tie game, I don't know that there's a club right now. And look, Chapman and Betances have not been this year what we thought they would be. But you can't argue the fact that they should have the advantage over every single team going into the 7th inning in a tie game. And, there are bullpens that are good. The Red Sox bullpen is good, and I still think the Red Sox will do something. The Indians bullpen with Allen and Miller is good. But I think you can argue that the Yankees bullpen I think it's better than the Dodgers pen. I think it's better than the Astros pen. And granted, those are better teams than the Yankees are overall. But I think what they've done now is they have started to shore up some of the avenues that they needed to shore up. Because think about the 6th inning. You go Canley in the 6th, Robertson in the 7th, Betances in the 8th, and Chapman in the 9th. And let's just say, for argument's sake, you've overused Robertson. All right, well, you still got Betances and Chapman. Let's say, for argument's sake, that Chapman has pitched 2 days in a row, and you feel like he doesn't have a third day in him. Well, you know what you do? You turn around, and then you move everybody up. So now Canley becomes your 7th inning guy, and Robertson becomes your 8th inning guy, and Betances becomes your closer. Or maybe you do the opposite. The nice thing for Girardi, and look, you can't even compare it to what the Mets are right now, because the Mets bullpen is comical. But the Mets have one way. They have to get 7 innings from a starter. Maybe you can get an inning from Blevins or, Robles at this point, and then you hand it to Reed. Now, Familia might come back, and then you'd go Reed to Familia. But the Mets don't have different avenues. They go from A to B. The Yankees can go from A to A1 to A2 to A3 to get to B. They can. I mean, you can close with Robertson. Robertson's had a really good year. He's, 13 of 14 and say, he's a closer. New York's not going to be too big for him. You know exactly what he is. So do I love it? Yeah. In 2017, I love it. Do I think there's a chance that in 2020 or 2021 that we look at this and we say, ugh, they traded these guys. They traded Rothenberg. They traded Clarkin, right? They traded Polo, right? I mean, they traded 3 legitimate pieces to get better now. You may not love it. They did not trade a gem in their minor league system. They did not. They traded a nice piece who may turn into something, who may not. But you cannot argue. I mean, there's no one on this earth that can argue the Yankees are not a better club built for the rest of this season and even next season than they were yesterday. And for that, I like it. They didn't trade a piece that you look at and you said, oh, God. I looked at Rutherford as a star of the future. The Yankees are littered, guys, with stars of the future. Between Bird and Judge and Sanchez, right? I mean, they have all they have is stars of the future. And Torres, that's what they have. They have 100 of these guys. So there's a chance that even if Rutherford did turn out to be a legitimate piece, that he'd never turn out to be able to start on this club because they are so talent-laden. So I get a lot of tweets. How are you going to spin this negatively on the Yankees because you can't stand them? Yeah, I will root against them right now. I hope Jose Berrios takes the mound and gives you 7 shutout innings and hand it to Kinsler, and he comes in and finishes this game with no trouble. I don't like the Yankees, but I'm not an idiot, and I can look at things fairly and rationally and say the Yankees absolutely, unequivocally improved themselves from yesterday to today. So if I was a Yankees fan and I'm waking up today, I get a win last night, my bullpen is now better, I've got a better third baseman, and I may not be done. The Yankees have done a really, really nice job. Now what they have to do today is find a way to win this game. Because, you could put a collection of the greatest players in the history of the game together. If you're not winning games and it's now time to step up and get that done, you have a major, major problem. Because you go from Minnesota, who, let's be honest, I don't even know how they're above 500. They are the definition of a mediocre team that has somehow really outkicked their coverage for the first half plus of the season. Then you go to Seattle, who's fighting with you. So the Yankees need to get going. But are the Yankees heading in the right direction? Yeah. I can't imagine. You could tell me, 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776, that you realistically look at this deal and you say, I just don't like it. I don't think this was a trade the Yankees should have made. This was a trade the Yankees should have made, and they did, and they really didn't mortgage a whole bunch of the future. So we'll get into the Yankees, 866-SAY-ESPN. I know they're starting now, so we'll move on quickly, but I want to give everybody the opportunity to comment on what the Yankees have done. Carmelo Anthony, I guess, has some things to say about the Knicks, and we'll get into that moving forward. Ed Orgeron joins us at 2:15 Eastern, so that'll be a fun conversation. And there's a great list on ESPN.com, which we've got to get into as well. So a lot to do. Just kick it off. Rothenberg in for Stephen A. right here on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Dave Rothenberg in for Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN app. So no Aaron Judge in the Yankees lineup today. He needs a day off, and they're finally giving him a day. He had a couple of hits last night. He actually had the hit that put the Yankees up for good. I know it's underway, but I just want to let you know. So it's no Judge. It's Gardner, Ellsbury, Sanchez, who just struck out looking, Castro, Gregorius, Frazier, Cooper, Romine, and Torreyes. So no Todd Frazier yet in the Yankees lineup. 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. All you Eli Manning haters, or he's overrated, or he's not what you think he is, you're going to be very disappointed because there's a new ranking that comes out which really gives credit to Eli for all he's accomplished, which to me is always comical that we even have to have a conversation of a guy that's never missed a game, has been a really, really good quarterback for his entire career, and has been a great quarterback in the biggest moments, yet there are those of us that have to defend him, but we'll get into that in a little bit, just because there's this great new ranking system from Mike Sando on ESPN.com, which I certainly want to get into. 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. Vinny, Staten Island. Vinny, you're on ESPN Radio.
Hey, what's going on, man? Thanks for taking the call.
You got it, Vin.
All right, so I like the trades, right? But you mentioned about the bullpen, man. I think the problem is the starting pitching. If we can't get our starting pitching to get us to put us in position for our relief pitchers to be able to take the 6th, the 7th, 8th, and the 9th.
I agree. But Vinny, when I started discussing this, what did I say? I said the Yankees still need at least one, if not two starters, didn't I?
Right. Because honestly, we put up runs. We that's not our issue. Isn't hitting the ball or scoring. I think it's more of our relief pitching coming through, which we should, but the starting pitching is which is I think it's instrumental in success, man.
Well, of course, and a lot of people say, then thanks for the call, Vinny, a lot of people have said, well, your starting pitching's overrated, give me this dynamic bullpen, but you can't have bad starting pitching. If you could get 6 innings and 3 runs, you take it, right? You get 6 in the third, 3 runs, guy on first, you got to go to the pen. I think you'd take that. But you can't have guys that get smacked around. You can't have subpar starters. And granted, Mitchell was okay the other night, but I don't think you can go in every 5th day with Brian Mitchell or Luis Sessa. You can't. Montgomery, fine. Severino, more than fine. Sabathia, fine. I mean, I'm surprised, and I'm not sure that Sabathia will continue to be good for that extended period of time. But for now, he's been more than fine. You look at what he's done lately since coming off the DL. He's been very good. Tanaka, he has to be fine. Like that, there's nothing you can do about Tanaka. He has to be okay. If you don't get a successful Masahiro Tanaka, then there's nothing you could do. Sometimes you bring a horse to water, a camel to water, whatever the phrase is. They don't drink. I mean, you have who should be an upper echelon starting pitcher. If he's not, there's not. You can't not use him. You can't move him to the pen. There's nothing that can be done about Tanaka. So 4 of your 5 spots should be okay, and you have that one that you need to fill. Look, I'm just throwing out a name. And I know he's been here in the past, like a Brandon McCarthy. You don't need to go out and grab Jose Quintana. You don't have to go out and grab a terrific player or a big, would I like Sonny Gray? Yeah, it depends on what I'd have to give up for Sonny Gray. Am I willing to mortgage the future for Sonny Gray? It depends. Do I think he's a nice starting pitcher? Absolutely. I don't even think I need that, though. I don't. I think give me a average to a little bit of an above average starting pitcher. I'd still give Chance Adams an opportunity to come up and take a start or two. Joe, Long Island. Joe, you're on ESPN Radio. What's up?
Hey, Dave, what's up, man? I love your work. I hope you got a steady seat.
I have a steady seat at night, Joe. I take exception to that.
Hey, listen, you know what? Real quick about the trade, how can you not like the trade? I agree with what you're saying. You hear the Yankee fans. This year, I know what you said yesterday about now where we're at, we have a chance to get the wild card. This year, I'm talking from a Cashman's perspective, is a bonus year for the Yankees. What they're trying to do is find out who their players are and who aren't. I think, and you would agree, Sanchez, Judge, I like what I see from Frazier. I like, hopefully Bird comes back. He can get healthy.
But you say who you have and who you can move forward with. I think those questions have been answered. Sanchez is going to be your catcher for a long time. Judge is going to be your right fielder for a long time. And you know that that Torres is going to be your third baseman probably for a long time, right? And you know that Frazier is going to be an outfielder for a long time, and they love Bird. So I think you know what the pieces are going to be. I got to tell you, you look at this, and you give me your take on this, Joe. You look at the American League, okay? That second wild card doesn't even have to be a good team. If you're the Yankees, I'm not saying you have to go on a run into the postseason. I'm not saying you got to get to the ALCS or the World Series. I think you have to get at least that second wild card if you're the Yankees this year.
I agree. Here's what where I don't agree with some of the fans is this. I agree that they should get the second wild card. What Cashman just made this trade is what he's probably saying is, what's the best way for me to improve my chances to get the wild card without mortgage in the future? If this year, see, the Yankees are about 2 years down the road. And let me just give me 1 second, I'll explain.
Go ahead.
Is that they want to win now, and they've always been that way for the last 3 years. They didn't pull a Houston and bottom out. They want to win now, but the big prize down the road is we have a lot of money coming off the books. A-Rod, Sabathia, you don't have to worry about paying Pineda anymore and making a tough call on that. Truthfully, I would never pay him. Now what's happening is they're off the books. A year after next year or into next year, Gardner, Headley, certain of those guys are off the books. So what happens is the Yankees reload. They find out they get their position players set. Then they go big game hunting for starting pitching when after the 2018 season.
I think you're right. I think you're 100% right. I think that the future that this club, a lot of people discuss, and thanks for the call, Joe, Bryce Harper's got to come here, or Manny Machado's got to come here. I think that what this team is going to need moving forward, and they really are doing a nice job keeping this in place and moving forward, starting pitching. That's what they need now. That's what they'll need in the future, because I don't know the future of Tanaka with this club. I don't know the future of Sabathia. You got to figure is going to move on. Pineda's probably never going to pitch again for the Yankees. So what you have, which is to what you will have, is really Montgomery and Severino and maybe Tanaka. But I think there's a big question mark surrounding that. 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. All right, Carmelo Anthony. We'll get into him. Adrian Wojnarowski was on SportsCenter, I guess, last night. And I want to read you what Adrian said about Melo and how I think a lot of other Knicks fans feel about the former Syracuse star and current Knicks player as well. We'll get into that next. Rothenberg in for Stephen A. right here on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I made it!
Dave Rothenberg in for Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN app, keeping you up to date on the Yankees in Minnesota. Rubber game of a 3-game set. Is there an hour time difference in Minnesota? There might be, right? Certain points of the year, maybe. So this is a noon start, but they're underway in their bottom 1 scoreless run in scoring position for the Twins right now. All right, 866 ESPN. Touched on the Yankees a little bit. You're welcome to call about the trade. I like the trade, and for me, this is the kind of deal that we're not going to know for a little while. You know? I mean, Frazier, Robertson, Canley, they make the Yankees, I think, considerably better. Their bullpen, talent-wise, has to be considered top 2 or 3 in all of baseball. How they produce is a different story, but I like the trade from the Yankees standpoint. Speaking of trades, and we are waiting and wait. You know, this trade with Carmelo Anthony, which I still expect to happen and probably not so far in the distant future, has been just, I mean, at what point does this get done? But I do like what the Knicks have done. And everyone says, you're so hard on the Knicks. I'm hard on the Knicks because they're a franchise that's, been running to the ground for the better part of almost 20 years now. But when I look at what they've done, they wanted to move Melo. They wanted to just unload him. They take pennies on the dollar. And now they've come out and said, you know what? Let Scott Perry sit down, assess the situation, get his feet wet, and decide exactly what it is that he wants to do. And I like that. And I think that's smart. I think that so many times, because let's be honest, what Phil Jackson did, even if Phil wanted to trade him, is completely devalue. And everybody says, yeah, but he took Porzingis. Yeah, but for every Porzingis and Hernan Gomez, Phil messed things up so terribly in so many different areas. All right? I mean, some of this Noah free agent signing was absolutely hideous. Courtney Lee, Aaron Aflalo, I mean, you could almost argue the best free agent signing he had was Robin Lopez, who then they traded to get Derrick Rose. But the point is this, is that I like that Scott Perry wants to sit down and look at the landscape and make a decision and not rush with the decision. I like it. But now I guess Carmelo Anthony, and we'll hear from Adrian Wojnarowski in a moment, but Adrian was on SportsCenter last night, and he said, and enough of, and I think Melo's been a very good player here for the Knicks, but enough of this, I want. How about what the Knicks want? How about what's better for the organization? And we'll hear from Adrian, but he says, I just want to really emphasize on this, Carmelo has made it clear to them, I want to go to Houston. I'm not interested in talking to you about being reincorporated back into this New York roster. Well, how about if we actually do what works for us? How about instead of you sitting here and telling us, I want this, I want that, and almost like a petulant child, if we can't deal you to Houston and we have a better deal on the table to Cleveland and you don't want to go there, then that's too bad on you. We would like to move you. We'd like to move you to Houston. We don't want to bring back the Ryan Anderson contract and have 3 years at that kind of money moving forward. What we would like to do, what we would like to have happen is to trade you, and if it's where you'd like to go, then it's where you'd like to go. And if it's not, then you have 2 choices. You can waive your no-trade clause, or you can remain a member of the Knicks in 2018 and 19. And that's up to you. So let's take a listen. Here's Adrian Wojnarowski. And do you guys feel like this? Like you're frustrated with the Phil Jackson regime. That's now done. And now you're kind of frustrated with Carmelo? It's like if you want to go, you might have to expand the one team you're willing to accept a deal to in Houston. We're not placating to you. We're trying to build a winner. And if it happens that you get what you want, that's great. And if it happens that you don't get exactly what you want, you know what? It's not exactly about you every single step of the way. 866-SAY-ESPN. Let's listen to Adrian Wojnarowski last night on SportsCenter discussing Melo and the Knicks.
Scott Perry took over as the Knicks GM. They had his press conference today, and Steve Mills, who's their president, what they've wanted to do here in the last few days is to hit the reset button on these Carmelo trade talks. They felt that Phil Jackson had cost them all their leverage to get anything back in a deal they wanted. Carmelo Anthony has made it clear to them, I want to go to Houston. I am not interested in talking to you about being reincorporated back into this New York roster. And so what they're trying to do, Steve Mills would not have ascended to this job in New York if he wasn't pretty politically savvy. He doesn't want to get into a public war here with Carmelo Anthony, who they spent over a year trying to run out of town.
Right.
Houston now is prepared for the fact that these talks, these negotiations with the Knicks could run through August, September, into possibly the start of training camp as New York tries to rebuild Melo's value and threaten people with the idea that they'll bring him back to start the season.
So there you have it. And I think that's the right move. And, you've heard me talk about the Knicks, and I get all the time, wow, you're so hard on the Knicks. And I am hard on the Knicks. And I think rightfully so. But I think this is the time that they're actually making the proper decision. We don't have to be in a rush. We're going to be bad with him. We're going to be worse without him, but we don't have to do anything. Now, for me, do I think it's necessary to move on from Carmelo Anthony? 100%. But I'll do it at my pace. If I'm the Knicks brass, if I'm Scott Perry, if I'm Steve Mills, if I'm Jeff Hornacek, if I'm James Dolan, this will happen. And Allen Houston, this will happen when we want it to happen. I'm not Phil Jackson where I got to move him and wash my hands of him, and that's what has to be done, and that's the direction we have to go in, and we're going to, come hell or high water, this is going to happen. No. I'm in control. And if we can work out a deal for you, Carmelo, to go to Houston, and that's where you want to go, then you know what? That's phenomenal. And we would love for you to be happy. But if we get a better offer from, I don't know, Portland or Cleveland, or wherever it happens to be, we will present that to you. And if you aren't willing to go there, then you know what? Maybe you have to be unhappy here. Maybe it's time for us to be in control more than you to be in control. 866-SAY-ESPN, 866-729-3776. That's my whole point. Maybe it means that you get a little bit more from Houston. Instead of, screaming from the rooftops, Melo's going, Melo's available, make your best offer for Melo. You know what? We're going to step back. We're going to see the landscape, and we're going to make you make a good offer for Carmelo Anthony. I like it. I like it a lot. Tony in Jersey. Tony, you're on ESPN Radio. Tony, go ahead.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Guy, what's on your mind today, Tony?
Nothing much. So, real quick about the Knicks.
Tony, this is a terrific call. Do you have anything to say regarding the Knicks?
Yeah, it gets me so frustrated because I'm a Knicks fan. I've been growing. I love the Knicks, and honestly, first off, Melo going to the Rockets makes absolutely no sense because you can have three dominant ball handlers on the Rockets.
Yeah, but Melo's not a ball handler. Melo, in the right system, I think Carmelo Anthony can be very productive.
Not so much as ball handlers. That's my mistake. People that need the ball in their hand. Melo is like, when he gets the ball, it's like everything just like stops. The game slows down, especially on the Rockets. They're a fast team. I don't really see how they're going to work together,
I think you know what they are, and I think it kind of plays into what he likes. And thanks for the call, Tony. You know what? It plays into the I don't have to really play defense. We can get a ton of shots up. I'm going to score 20. I mean, how can you not, if you're Melo, how can you not score 20-plus points a game on a team that's going to score 115 points a game? I think it's a great fit for him. Now, does he isolate, get the ball, slow it down? Yeah, yes, that is a part of his game that would have to change. But, Chris Paul's his guy, and I think he would admit that Harden is still the guy there, and I think they'll find a way to make that work. But he's not going to have to go out to Houston and grind on defense. If you are isolated and you go to the rim and you miss a 6-footer, and whoever comes back the other way and they go and they dunk it in your face and you didn't get back past half court, D'Antoni's not going to take you to the bench. D'Antoni's not going to scream and yell and go crazy at you. Why? Because their goal is not to out-defend you. Their goal is to outscore you. And you can't tell me that Carmelo Anthony doesn't help Houston or any team outscore you. He does. He makes any team. Look, he makes the Knicks a better scoring team. I don't know if he's the right. In fact, I don't think he's the right fit for the Knicks, but he makes them a better scoring team. Now, with the Knicks, he needs a change of scenery. He needs to go play with a point guard. There's a lot of things, and there's a lot of those things that are crossed off the list when it comes to Houston. Mike, Staten Island. Mike, you're on ESPN Radio.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, how you doing, Dave? Thanks for taking my call.
You got it, Mike.
Melo going to the Rockets hurts the NBA. Let me tell you why. The West has already tipped the scale before July, but even the scale is tipped. You have now 14 top NBA All-Star scorers. The 14 top scorers that are in the West. Bill,
right.
Lopez.
You don't have to run through them all. We know Anthony Davis, and we know Damian Lillard and Durant and Kerr. We know that the West is clearly the dominant conference.
Just recently, Butler and Millsap.
Mike,
and
you don't need to go through every guy. What's the point?
Every guy, but just recently, those four just went west. So if Melo goes west, you have 15 of the top scorers in the West.
Oh, okay. So what?
So what? So now you have the Cavs running all through the East, and because they don't have any competition now.
Okay, so if Carmelo Anthony stays in the Eastern Conference and stays on the Knicks, then what? The Cavs don't go back to the NBA Finals?
I mean, it's going to be that much. It's going to be a little more difficult.
Oh, Mike, give me a break. You think that come on? You think if Carmelo Anthony stays on the Knicks, that LeBron James loses one moment of rest because Carmelo's on the Knicks? Who cares? It's cyclical. There'll be a time when the East is clearly the dominant conference again. 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. Ed Orgeron, 2:15. We'll get into this NFL quarterback story as well. Rothenberg in for Stephen A. right here, ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Longtime listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Rothenberg in for Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN app. Talking Carmelo Anthony. He's a very polarizing guy. You get Knicks fans that just have this very negative view of him, and then you get like the Carmelo Anthony apologist who, oh my God, he can do no wrong. He's an all-time great player. Like this gentleman that called before, and it was difficult for him to get his point out. Once he got it out, he said, "You look, Carmelo Anthony just changes the balance of power again." So yeah, I think if you believe that, you're kind of missing the boat on Carmelo Anthony. Yeah, he can still score. He's not a top 20 player. When you look at these top stars that are in the Western Conference as opposed to the East, and you're going to include Melo in that? No, he's not. He's not one of those guys. I mean, it's Curry, it's Durant, it's Butler, it's Millsap, I didn't know Millsap. It's Lillard, it's Anthony Davis, it's DeMarcus Cousins, Chris Paul. I'm not putting Carmelo Anthony on that list of these guys that are so great. Melo, and where could Melo go in the East? Not named Cleveland, that is going to make anybody compete with Cleveland. Maybe Boston, otherwise nowhere. So I like that Carmelo's going to go out there. Maybe Houston will be a little bit better. And they had Paul George to Oklahoma City, and Chris Paul to Houston, and maybe there is a little bit of I mean, there's not going to be a shift because Golden State's still going to be so good, but maybe one team can compete with the Warriors in a 7-game series. And I don't think Melo puts Houston over the top, but I think he makes them better. Adding him and losing, God knows what they'd lose, I think clearly makes them better than they would be without him. Walter in Harlem. Walter, you're on ESPN Radio.
Yeah, hello. I think Melo hasn't done anything wrong. A couple of seasons ago, he led the team in scoring, assists, and rebounds.
Right.
Okay, all three. The guy's working hard. Phil Jackson was just mailing the team in the years that he was here. Melo said, "I'm going to stay."
And that's fine, but Walter, you don't think it's time to move in a different direction?
I think that he did nothing wrong. The only problem was that Phil Jackson decided, like an idiot, to try to get rid of him and belittle him every quarter.
Well, you know what? It's not Phil Jackson's regime anymore. That ship has sailed. We're not talking about Phil Jackson. This is now Scott Perry, and Scott Perry and Steve Mills are making the decision. So I'll ask you again. Do you not think that it's time to move on from Carmelo Anthony?
Not. Because if you remember, when Carmelo didn't play last year and the season before that, do you see how bad the Knicks were?
They will be bad. But, okay, Walter, what are if you keep Carmelo Anthony, what are the Knicks this year going to do?
The real question is, if you get rid of Carmelo Anthony, they'll be one of the worst teams in the league.
And you know what, Walter? I'm fine with that.
Not. Every other team in the NBA is trying to add superstars.
You
the
think
Knicks
so?
are the only team
you
who's
think
trying to
so?
get rid of the only guy they have.
No, stop yelling. All right, you're a lunatic, and thank you for the call. 866-ESPN. You're not crazy because you want to keep Melo. You're crazy because you think that the Knicks are the only club that might be playing for Michael Porter next year. Why is that so terrible? Philadelphia did it for 5 years, and they finally have a team that looks like they might be functional. You think Brooklyn is trying to add superstars? Brooklyn has to do it. It's even more difficult for them. For them to bring on a decent player, they have to bring on salary. They have to bring on Mozgov just to bring on D'Angelo Russell. So calm down. I'm not saying Melo's bad, and yes, the Knicks are a better team with him. But is that what I want? Do I want to be a 33-win team, or do I want to be an 18-win team? Same thing with the Jets. Same thing. Do I want to be a 2-win team, or do I want to be a 6-win team? Give me a worse record. Let me endure a bad year, and let me get Sam Darnold, and let me get Michael Porter. Ron in Queens. Ron, you're on ESPN Radio, buddy.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome.
I completely agree with you because Melo's he's got to go. And here's a question for Houston, because when does he always play best? When he's in the Olympics or in All-Star games, when he has guys that can create for him. And he's not holding the ball for 18 seconds trying to pull-up jump shots. But what's the point in not taking Ryan Anderson back?
They don't want the deal. They don't want. I mean, what does he have? $20 million a year for 3 years?
Why can't they have the contract? Who are they bringing in? No one's coming to this team.
Look,
going to be bad.
You know what the thing is? They just signed Tim Hardaway Jr. They have Joakim Noah. I want to bring in a third mediocre guy. And thanks for the call, Ron. I want to bring in a third mediocre guy. No, thank you. That paying that much money, $20 million to him, $17 to him. No. Courtney Lee's locked in. I don't want to get into these long-term deals. No, thank you. That's why I don't even mind the Kentavious Caldwell-Pope signing. It's 1 year. It's astronomical money. I'm fine with it. 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. So, look, I get it. You want to make this team better, but sometimes it's better to go backwards to then go forwards. And that's what the Jets are doing. Now, whether you can do it or not is a different story. But the attempt to do it, I think, is the exact right thing for the Knicks. Interesting article on ESPN.com about NFL quarterbacks. We'll go there next. Rothenberg in for Stephen A., ESPN Radio.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Channel 80 and the ESPN app.
I'm all-pro cornerback Richard Sherman, and when I'm not chasing receivers, I'm trying to keep up with my kids. That's why Alberto beef jerky is my favorite snack. Alberto is delicious, lean beef, slow-cooked and seasoned to perfection, all natural and all delicious. Alberto beef jerky is protein-packed, so I can keep up with my busy. Raiden, stop grabbing your sister's hair.
Alberto beef jerky. You get out what you put in.
Refers to Alberto's all-natural line of beef jerkies. Minimally processed, no artificial ingredients.
This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A. Start the second hour of the Stephen A. Smith Show with excellent news. The Minnesota Twins have just cashed in an RBI base hit. 2-run score off Jordan Montgomery. Twins 2, Yankees nothing. But good news for the Yankees and their fans. Looks like the trio from the White Sox has arrived in Minnesota. Canley, Robertson, Frazier. 2-0 Twins, bottom 2. Montgomery and Berrios. 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. So here there's a really interesting article that I want to get into with you guys. It's on ESPN.com, and Mike Sanda, who always does these really, really well-done ranking systems. And he asked, I want to try to find the panel that he asked all these guys, to let him know from 1978 the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So let's think about this for a second now. From 1978, so that's roughly, 40 years. The best quarterbacks in the NFL over the last 40 years. And here's some of the guys that were involved in these decisions. Wade Phillips. These are not, assistant scout water boy guys. These are really big-time names. Wade Phillips, Tony Dungy, Al Saunders, Mike Holmgren, Howard Mudd, Norv Turner, Ray Rhodes, Mike Shanahan. Okay? So those are some of the guys that he spoke to for this survey. And here is the top 10. We'll go from 1 down, and you can certainly get involved with the conversation. 866-SAY-ESPN. The best quarterback, according to that panel, since 1978 is Tom Brady. He is ranked number 1. Number 2, Peyton Manning. Number 3, Joe Montana. Number 4, John Elway. Number 5, Aaron Rodgers. So now Brady can't move up, obviously. He's 1. Rodgers can move up. Like, Rodgers has time that he can have a lot more success. And, I mean, I think you could argue, I've said this a million times, that to me, Rodgers is a better quarterback right now than Tom Brady. But I think if Rodgers were to win another Super Bowl or go on another magical run, and he can move up to 2, maybe 3. Right? Certainly ahead of Elway and possibly Montana. But then you think about Montana. Montana's got 4. I think about Montana is he never lost. He never, ever lost in the Super Bowl. All right. So Rodgers is 5. Marino is 6, tied with Favre. Steve Young is 8. Drew Brees is 9. And then Dan Fouts, who, mind you, gets no credit at all. In fact, if I say to anybody, Dan Fouts, and you're like 30 years old, you're like, who? Who is this Dan Fouts? Dan Fouts was like the original gunslinger under Don Coryell back in the late 70s, early 80s with the Chargers. And they had, John Jefferson and Wes Chandler and Charlie Joyner. They had a sensational offensive team. So the best of the rest, Roethlisberger and Kurt Warner are tied for 11th. All right, so that's 11 and 12 combined for 11. Troy Aikman is 13. Warren Moon is 14. Jim Kelly is 15. And the 16th best quarterback in the NFL since 1978 in 40 years on this list is Eli Manning. So for everyone that sits here and says, Eli can't do this, and Eli has the droopy face, and Eli looks like he doesn't care, and Eli this, and Eli that, and Eli the other, you know what? In the last 40 years, he's ranked as the 16th best quarterback by a lot of very influential guys. And look, I love Warren Moon. I think he's a great all-time quarterback. In a big spot, you're going to go Warren Moon or you're going to go Eli Manning? And I guess that's the question. Is it in a big spot? I mean, if you look at this list, in a big spot, you could say you take Eli Manning over any of these guys. No, I guess not Brady. But, you could say you take him over Roethlisberger. You could say you take him over Dan Fouts, certainly. You could say you take him over I don't think that you could call right now. And I guess Brady would be that guy, and Montana would be that guy potentially as well. But if you're saying the biggest game, the Super Bowl, the creme de la creme, right? And I said, you know what, I'll take Eli Manning. I don't think you could call me and take exception with that. I really don't. Now, I think where Eli loses some of that momentum is when you start to think about week after week after week after week, where he leads the NFL in interceptions, where he's now become a somewhat immobile quarterback, where he's had years that you look at and you say, that's not a great year. That's not a great year. And where Eli wins the battle is I don't know that there's anybody that you could say has had the postseason run that he's had. Anybody. Now, you could include Brady. I'm talking about one postseason run, 1 year. Has anybody ever had a better run than what he did in 2007? And I think the answer is no. They beat Tampa on the road. They beat Dallas, who was 13-3. They beat Green in Dallas. They beat Green Bay, who was 13-3, in a frigid Lambeau Field, and then they beat New England, who was undefeated. And not only did they beat New England, but in the biggest moment of the game, after Brady gave the Patriots the lead, Eli led his club back on a long drive, culminating in the touchdown pass to Plexico Burress. And you'll hear people say things to the extent that, well, I mean, if not for that catch by David Tyree and then the Manningham one in 2011. But you know what? If not for the Edelman catch last year, there's rarely ever a team or a season or a moment that you can't say, if this doesn't happen, they don't win. Look, I could sit here and tell you, if Jeffrey Mayer doesn't lunge over the wall, maybe the Yankees don't win the World Series that year. But it happened, and it happened. 866-SAY-ESPN, 866-729-3776. So, 16th ranked quarterback since 1978. Fair. And if I have to win the biggest of games, for me, I don't know that there's more than 3 or 4 guys that I would take over Eli Manning. Jarvis is on ESPN Radio. What's up, Jarvis? Jarvis, turn your radio down and talk to me. Jarvis, turn your radio down and talk to me.
Hands down, Peyton Manning is the best to ever play the game.
But here's the thing, Jarvis. Peyton Manning has won 2 Super Bowls. Tom Brady has won 5. And I love Peyton. I mean, I would defend Peyton to the hilt. But you can't deny that in the postseason, Tom Brady has been a better quarterback than Peyton Manning.
Correct. But that's just based on number-wise. Number-wise, yeah.
No, it's based on wins. It's based on numbers. It's based on success. In the postseason, Jarvis, Peyton Manning is not as good as Tom Brady.
Well, you can argue that. I mean, if you just a Tom Brady fan, you can argue that. It's up for debate. But when it comes down to the overall player himself, not just going off his stats, how many rings he won, how many playoff games he won, just overall, stand in the pocket, gunslinger, read defenses. Manning is a master, man.
You're not going to have me argue anything negative about Peyton Manning. Thanks for the call, Jarvis. I will leave it at this. Peyton Manning is the best regular season quarterback I have ever seen. And Tom Brady is a far, far better postseason QB. If you haven't heard the name Miguel Sano, you should. He just crushed a 3-run shot off of Jordan Montgomery. Twins up 6-0 over the Yankees. But the good news is you got Robertson and Canley. Maybe they bring them in a little bit earlier to get their feet wet today for the Yankees. The head coach of LSU, Ed Orgeron, joins me next. Rothenberg in for Stephen A. right here, ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Stephen A. Smith Show. Dave Rothenberg sitting in. Stephen A. will be back with you next Monday. We're here on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. We'll get back to the quarterbacks and the Mello, and the Yankees are getting pummeled, by the way, in Minnesota. 6-0, top 3. Montgomery has just gotten run out of the stadium there in Minnesota. But college football, and we're right here, right? We're a little more than a month away from the start of college football, and NFL training camps get rolling next week. And we bring in the new head coach of LSU, Ed Orgeron. Ed, we appreciate a couple minutes. Thanks so much for sitting with us.
Hey, it's great to be on the show.
You, by the way, are honestly, I was saying this earlier on, of any of the college coaches, you have so much energy and personality, and just, you're one of the guys that I think people are really drawn to.
Thank you, Dave. I enjoy my job. I enjoy coaching at LSU, enjoy the players, just enjoy everything about college football.
So I know you spent a little time in the media. When you sit at ESPN and you're on Mike and Mike and this show and Russillo and every show, like, do you enjoy it, or is this like a work day for you?
No, I enjoy every minute of it. Obviously, it's my first time to ESPN in Bristol. What a tremendous organization. It's a great opportunity to promote LSU football. My first year as the head football coach there, promote our team and promote our coaching staff, and it's excellent for recruiting.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. So let's discuss your team right now. You took over from a guy who had, a lot of success in Les Miles at LSU. I guess we start out with this. What are the expectations for your club heading into this year?
Our expectation is come in and have a great camp, build a team. We have a brand new offense, as you know, under Matt Canada. learn the offense, be able to gel as a football team, get better on special teams. I take it one game at a time throughout the season, continue to make progress throughout the season. Let's see where it takes us.
It kind of has felt like defensively LSU over the last couple of years has been as good, almost as good as any defense in the country, but where there's been a little fall off and a little bit of struggle is on the offensive side of things. Is that a fair statement?
That is a fair statement.
So how does that improve coming into this year?
Well, the first game we took over, Steve Ensminger did a tremendous job as offensive coordinator, went to the spread offense, and we set a SEC record for LSU total offense. I think we went from 14 points, averaging 14 points to almost 31 points a game, more than double it. So we're on the right track. We know what we're doing. And I think with the addition of Matt Canada, our staff, we should be in great shape.
You guys, there's so much NFL talent that goes through that program. And, just looking at the draft, Leonard Fournette and Jamal Adams, of course, any program's going to miss those guys, but do you feel like there'll be some semblance of a seamless transition heading into this year, your first year, full year there?
Well, I will say this to you. There's been a lot of great talent that we lost, but we have some outstanding talent coming back, especially in Darius Geis and Arden Key. We have the fastest player in college football, Dante Jackson. I expect him to have a great year. We have a tremendous recruiting class. We're going to have some young guys. A lot of guys are going to have to step up and develop throughout the season. But, yes, we do have talent at LSU.
A lot of New Yorkers listening to the show here. We're on in New York, of course, and ESPN app and, of course, Sirius XM Channel 80. But, what the Jets fans are sitting here glued to their radio and their phones right now, they want to hear your scouting report over their number one pick, Jamal Adams. What kind of player? Give us a little feedback, a little insight into what the Jets get in the star safety from LSU.
He is a tremendous leader, tremendous communicator. He's going to be the quarterback of that defense. He's very smart. He's tough. He's physical. As you see, the game he had against Louisville, against Lamar Jackson, shut him down. He can run, make tackles in space, can cover man-to-man, can cover in zone, can play the post, can be the 8th guy in the box, does it all, and will be a great representation of the New York Jets.
So Ed Orgeron joining us here, head coach at LSU. So he has everything is there. Is there one thing, Coach, that you look at and you say, that needs to get better for him to be a standout safety, or does he have it already?
I think he has it. I think he has the maturity. I think he has the work ethic. I think the guy's going to be a dominant player. He's joined by one of my ex-players, and I know you guys are excited about Leonard Big Cat Williams.
Oh, yeah. Williams is just you were with him at USC. Did you think he was going to be this good at the next level? Because there are times, Coach, where he is dominant at the NFL level.
He's one of the top players I've ever coached, and we've coached some great defensive linemen. I think he's going to be a Hall of Fame, NFL All-Pro player, perhaps a Hall of Famer.
Best player you've ever coached?
One of the best.
Who is? I'll put you on the spot here. Who is the best player you've ever coached?
You got to look at Cortez Kennedy and Russell Maryland and Warren Sapp. Those three players were fantastic.
They certainly were. You're talking about a Hall of Fame caliber guys. All right, so Adams to the Jets. There's full reason to be excited about him for the Jets fans. A lot of Jets fans had wanted, if he would have dropped, would it be to grab Leonard Fournette. He goes a little higher than the Jets were able to grab him, but is he going to be an incredibly special back at this level?
Yes, he is. I think he's really starting to come into his own. Didn't play his whole junior year, and didn't play every game that he wanted to. Had an ankle injury. Now he's 100% healthy. I think he's in a great program in Jacksonville with Doug Marrone and Tom Coughlin. I think the guy's actually going to flourish in the NFL.
Is the easiest position offensively, or maybe all around, to go from college to the NFL? Is it at the running back spot?
I think the transition is probably the simplest, but you have to be a tough back and every down back in the NFL because you're going to get hit. Obviously, you have to take the beating week in and week out, and you have to be a third down back. You have to understand protections. You have to be able to protect and catch the ball out the backfield. Leonard can do all three.
So is there – I asked you about Jamal Adams. Do you think he's a complete back coming in right now, or do you think that Leonard has to work on a piece of his game?
I think Leonard's a complete back. I think once he learns the system in Jacksonville, he will be an outstanding rookie.
Ed Orgeron, head coach of LSU, joining us here on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Rothenberg filling in, ESPN Radio, ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80. Getting back to your team, I mean, it's your first year, but I guess out of the corner of your eye, for any team in college football, specifically a club like LSU, are you always watching Alabama? Are they always a club that you keep your eye on?
Not really. We focus on LSU. We focus on our recruiting. We focus on our methods. Give Coach Saban credit. He's done a tremendous job at Alabama, but this is not chase Alabama every day. Now, Alabama's the benchmark. We know when we get there that week, we have to beat them. We haven't beat them in 6 years. In order for us to win the championship, we have to get through Alabama. We understand that.
Is he the best coach in college football right now?
He's proven to be the most successful coach for sure.
Do you look at your club and think we're a playoff caliber team?
I don't know that yet. I need to see our team in camp. We have some guys that we need to replace, especially on defense. We have 2 brand new linebackers, like you said, replaced Jamal, Tre'Davious White. A lot of great guys that left our team. We have some young guys that are capable of doing the job. We just have to see them mature throughout the season.
There's been a lot of conversation lately that maybe the SEC is not the premier football conference in the country anymore. Maybe it's the ACC. Maybe it's the Big Ten. Where do you fall in on this discussion?
There's a lot of great conferences out there. There's a lot of great football, a lot of great players, a lot of great coaches. But I think week in and week out right now, the SEC is still the best conference.
Coach, I am looking at a photograph of you shirtless working out with your players from a what's the genesis of that? Like, are your guys like, Coach, let's take our shirts off and work out? No. Do you want to try to become one of the guys? You say, all right, guys, here we go. I'm going to remove my shirt. How does this work here?
No, this is I was taking a jog 3 weeks ago on a 95-degree day in Baton Rouge. I was on the Mississippi River on a levee by myself where I don't meet anybody, so I took my shirt off. It was a little hot, and all of a sudden I meet 3 guys working out. They want to take a picture. I shouldn't have done it. It's not something that I want to do. My bad.
I don't. You're bad. You look terrific. So I'd be very proud if I were you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
If that was me, I think the internet would shut down. But you look wonderful. How closely do you follow the NFL game?
I love the NFL. I watch it as much as I can. I have a lot of great friends that coach in the NFL. Obviously, Sunday's a busy day, but I do follow it.
What do you think about our local teams here? What's your take on the Giants and adding a Brandon Marshall and what they look like this year?
Yeah, I think they're going to be fantastic. I've always loved the Giants. I've always loved the Jets. My 3 years I spent in Syracuse, I followed them. I think they got a great quarterback and Peyton Manning. And then in Manning, obviously, anytime you have a great quarterback like Eli is, you have a chance to win a championship.
All right, and the Jets. Do you honestly think this is going to be a rough season, kind of a building season for the future?
I don't know. All I know is I'm a big fan of Leonard Big Cat Williams and Jamal Adams. I know I'm pulling for them.
Well, you know what? That defense, offensively, they may be hamstrung, but defensively, the Jets have with Wilkerson and Williams and Adams, and there really is some talent. Darren Lee they added last year. They do have some talent defensively.
And that's the way to do it. You win championships with great defense.
Yeah, you certainly do. Coach, listen, I know you're heading over to another show right now. Thanks for a couple of minutes. Best of luck, and hopefully we'll talk about you late in the season getting into that 14 playoff.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Go Tigers.
All right, good stuff. We appreciate it as well. That is the head coach of LSU football, Ed Orgeron, who you talk about some of the talent that man has been with, huh? Jamal Adams. And you just got your scouting report, Jets fans, on him. He says right now he doesn't even have a weakness in his game. And that's what we've heard. We've heard that this kid is as complete and ready and an NFL safety as there is out there coming out of college. 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. Yankees down 6-0, end of 3. We get back into the quarterback story and Carmelo Anthony as well. Rothenberg with you in for Stephen A., ESPN Radio, and the ESPN app.
Guess what?
You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Damn it, I mean it!
Rothenberg in for Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80. Good to chat with the head coach of LSU football, Ed Orgeron, who is really a character. Spent time at USC, was with Ole Miss for a couple of years as well. Now he's running LSU, which really, when you think about it, is one of the premier programs in all of college football. And he is and this was always the thing about Orgeron, he is a brilliant, masterful recruiter. Just at that level of just, you can't even compare. And it's funny, when we were at break, we were just discussing it on the air here, and it was how good college football actually is. And guys, think about it for a second now. College football is so phenomenal right now because the regular season has tremendous meaning, and you don't get that in college basketball. You don't have the same thing in college basketball. College basketball there's nothing better than the tournament. There's nothing better than March Madness, which is a 3-week run of the best teams. The regular season of college basketball now is, if I root for North Carolina, which I don't, I despise them, but if I root for Duke or Carolina or Kentucky, what is my regular season? So if I have an unbelievable year, I'm going to get the 1 seed. If I have a decent year, I'll get the 2 seed. If I have an off year, I'll get the 3 seed. Like, the regular season in college basketball is meaningless now, and it's all about the postseason. College football, you lose week 3 to Texas A&M, your season's in turmoil. So college football, it really is. And I know we're a pro sports town. We don't love the collegiate game as much, but I wish there was a way to fix college basketball the way college football is. So it's perfect. It really is. And you get a lot of discussion. Should they go to 8 teams? Look, if you can't be one of 4, like if you have to be one of 8, would it bother me? No, but I think 4 is. I think it's perfect. I really do. I think that the game of college football right now is so well run and so exciting, and every game is meaningful, and the postseason is great, and the national championship, it's great. I really believe it. I absolutely love it. All right, let's get back to this Eli Manning story. It's not really an Eli Manning story. It's more of the top quarterback since 1978. So Mike Sando, ESPN.com, puts out this story, the top quarterbacks since 1978. And we'll refresh here on the list. We'll take your calls, 866-SAY-ESPN. He has Brady 1, which I don't think you can argue with. He has Peyton number 2, which I don't think you can argue with. He has Montana 3, Elway 4, Rodgers 5, Marino and Favre 6. And I guess you say, what's your criteria, right? Is it how many Super Bowls do you have? Is it how great were you in the regular season? Is it how durable were you? Is it a combination of regular season and postseason? So Steve Young is 8, Breeze 9, Fouts 10. Fouts is interesting because Fouts never even went to a Super Bowl. They were supposed to go in, was it 81, and they went to that game, and they went up against Ken Anderson and the Bengals, and they lost that, freezing cold game. And then the Bengals lost to number 3 on the list, Joe Montana, in the 81 Super Bowl in Detroit, which was interesting. The 81 Super Bowl in Detroit, the teams were almost late for that game. There was a huge storm before that, and I've heard Bill Walsh make a comment of it. They were on the bus, and they could see the stadium, but they couldn't get there because there was ice and sleet, and it was just awful, awful weather. So getting back to this list, you've got Fouts 10. Again, Fouts was great. And see, the thing with Fouts is he that team kind of revolutionized the game. Now, granted, they never even got to a Super Bowl, but they really did because Coryell was so different, and the NFL used to be. If you look back, go to Google and look back at the most yards in a season for a quarterback in like 1980, 81. You see, you led I don't even know if guys got to 4,000 yards. If you threw for 3,300 yards, you had a monster season. If a guy threw for 3,300 yards now, you'd say this guy shouldn't be in the league. He's not NFL caliber. And that's how the game has changed. It's changed dramatically. It really has. It went from a game where you ran the ball mainly, and then you'd mix in the throw, to now where you are is you run the ball to keep defenses honest, but you're about throwing the football. So, all right, let's get back to this. So I gave you the top 10, and I think our local flavor here is number 16. And that, of course, is one Eli Manning. And see, Eli, to me, is so difficult. And 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. Eli is so difficult to give a number to. Say he's a Hall of Famer or he's not. Or he's the 16th best quarterback since 1978, or he's not. Because Eli Manning has had really bad moments and bad years, you could argue. I was talking with Jordan Renan, who's the beat reporter for the Giants on ESPN.com recently. He said, look, let's be honest. I like Eli. He had a bad year last year. But then on the flip side of that, leading the league in interceptions and getting picked off multiple times and having struggles and all those things are 100% true. Is there a quarterback that you say in a big spot I'd rather have than Eli? And there's such a dichotomy with this guy. Roethlisberger is consistent. He's a terrific quarterback in the regular season. He's a very good quarterback in the postseason. He's been to, 3 Super Bowls. He's won 2. He's easier to define. Kurt Warner, great, started late, came from nothing, great regular season quarterback, terrific postseason quarterback, was a drive away from Roethlisberger from going 2-0 in the Super Bowl. Great. Troy, most accurate pass you've ever seen. Troy Aikman, right? Didn't put up the stats that some of these guys put up, but not much of a negative when it came to Warren Moon. Unbelievable, gaudy stats, incredible. Jim Kelly, great. Didn't win the big game, but went there 4 times. And then you get to Eli. And this, to me, is why Eli's always so tough to analyze. Because he has gone on, and I think this is fair to say, he has gone on some of the most, and 2 of them he did it. He didn't do it once, he did it twice. This guy could retire tomorrow, and I still think you look at Eli Manning as a Hall of Fame quarterback. But he took 2 separate teams on runs that were epic. The first one, I don't know if it ever gets matched again, and the second one was sensational as well. Second one, they had a home game. They beat Atlanta, 24-2. Then they go on the road, and they beat Green Bay, 15-1 Green Bay. And then they go on the road and beat, 13-3 San Francisco? And then they go back to the Super Bowl and beat another very good team in New England. So are there a lot of negatives? There's probably more negatives, and this is the thing that's interesting about Eli. There's probably more negatives with Eli Manning than anybody on this list. Maybe not Fouts, because Fouts was great, but Fouts had flaws as well. But Brady and Manning and Montana and Elway and Rodgers and Marino and Favre and Young and Breeze, they don't have the floor that Eli Manning does. Eli Manning has had years where you look at it and say, boy, he just really wasn't great this year. But his ceiling, maybe the highest ceiling of anybody, you could almost argue, ever. Jeff in New York. You're on ESPN, Jeff.
Hey, Dave, you are such a homer, and I love that.
How am I a homer?
Well, listen, the Giant fan, your story about hating Donovan McNabb just because he was an Eagle, it gives me goosebumps to even talk about it again. I really appreciate it. Here's my point on Eli. I think you hit the nail on the head. There was too much of regular season issues, but there's been nobody that's been more ice in his veins and better in the postseason than Eli has. And I think it's going to take, unfortunately for us in New York, for his actual retirement before those people who've been giving him that hard time really learn to appreciate him. And I can't wait for that day to come, or I don't want it to come, because I think that people don't appreciate him enough.
They don't appreciate him. And it was the same thing, and thanks for the call, Jeff, it was the same thing with Phil Simms. Phil Simms was just a lunch pail, workmanlike guy, but he got injured a lot. And that's another thing with Eli. He's never, and knock on wood when you say it, he's never missed a game. In the NFL, to never miss a game since 2004 when he first got the nod, that's completely unprecedented. But maybe you think I am. I don't think I'm being a homer. I said I think that the floor on Eli is lower than anybody on this list. No one has had more struggles as a top-flight quarterback in their career than Eli Manning. So I don't know how that's being a homer, but on the flip side, can you argue? Is there anybody, when you look at the numbers and just the achievements, that has had more success in the biggest moments? And I think deservingly so. Joe Namath sat around a pool in Miami and told everyone, I guarantee we're going to win, and led a club 50 years ago on a Super Bowl charge, and they won the whole thing. And he did very little in that game, and they won it, and they're Super Bowl champions. Eli Manning in his postseason run has done far superior to what Namath did, but we look at Namath as this heroic, brilliant figure, and for some reason, and I don't know why, we look at Eli as a guy that's, aw shucks, sometimes he's great, and sometimes he's not. You know what? When he's been great, there's not a lot that have been better than he has in his career. 866-SAY-ESPN, 866-729-3776. Rothenberg with you, right here, ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Daddy, where do babies come from? Honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very happy.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could have this talk, sunshine.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Dave Rothenberg in for Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN app. Yankees are getting bludgeoned in Minnesota, 6-0, bottom 5. I think this will be if the Yankees lose today, 12 straight series that they will have not won. Right? I think it's 0-10-2. That is really, and you know what? They're going to go 0-10-2 in 12 series and still be a wild card team. Yeah, honestly, if you don't make the postseason this year in the American League, you're not. I mean, you could say the wild card team won't be good, but right now the Twins are on the outside looking in. They're the next of the best teams, the first non-wild card team. They're 47-46. Seattle comes after them. They're 47-48. So Yankees, if they lose today, will be 48-45, and still a team that's in the wild card standings. 866-ESPN, 866-729-3776. Now, you say I'm a homer. Rodel Santos says, and Eli's bad years can be attributed to a horrible offensive line. I don't think that's fair. I think that, look, to be honest, I think Eli Manning has had bad years. You know, and the truth is, when you watch Eli, there are games that he plays great, and even when he has those games where he's great and he leads them on a late drive, where there are at least one, if not more, moments in the game where he puts the ball on a defender's fingertips and maybe doesn't get picked off. Look, you could say that about the Super Bowl. Right, Asante Samuel had the ball, catches the ball. Patriots are 19-0, greatest team we've ever seen in our life. So he does have more of that than a lot of other quarterbacks. 866-ESPN. Pablo in Jersey. Pablo, you're on ESPN Radio.
Dave, how's it going, my friend?
Good. What's up, buddy?
Not much. Just wanted to comment on Eli. As a Giant fan, grateful to have him. You see, teams like the Jets and what they've gone through, and you understand what he's brought to this franchise. That being said, I still believe in my heart, looking back on that 04 draft or 03, whenever it was, I would have kept Philip Rivers in hindsight.
Oh, good. Honestly, look, if you want to sit there, Pablo, and tell me you take Roethlisberger over Eli, I can't argue with you at all. How could you possibly say you would take a guy, and you can make every excuse in the world you want for Philip Rivers. He's never been to a Super Bowl. He's been to the AFC Championship game. He's never won one. He's not Eli Manning.
I understand that, but I just think, looking back on it, I think
Pablo.
Rivers
This remark is almost inane. The guy has 2 Super Bowl rings and has been a Super Bowl MVP twice. How could you say you would want Rivers over him?
My point, what I'm trying to say is, in my opinion, I think Philip Rivers has done more with less talent around him. I understand Eli was a huge part of 07 and 11. The game in San Francisco and the game in Green Bay alone. Those are 2 historic playoff performances. So, like you said yourself, look at the 08 team.
The 08 team was the number 1 seed in the NFC. They were 12-4 that year. If Plexico Burress doesn't shoot himself in the leg, they might have won back-to-back Super Bowls.
I still believe Philip Rivers would have done more than Eli did.
I don't know. This to me is, and thanks for the call, Pablo, is one of the most frustrating comments that you could make. I'm not saying Eli is the greatest. You want to say Roethlisberger, you take him over, fine. I'm not going to argue with that. But to say I would take a guy who's never been to a Super Bowl over a guy that's won 2, or the Giants shouldn't have made that trade. If I would tell you, in April of 2004, Eli Manning, this is his career. He'll never miss a game. He'll go to the playoffs, 5 times? He'll have 3 times where he doesn't win a game, and 2 times he'll go on runs and they'll win the Super Bowl. You would have taken that as quickly as I would have gotten it out of my mouth. Bobby, Long Island. You're on ESPN Radio, Bob.
Yeah, hi, Dave. You said you would take Peyton Manning over Joe Montana. I mean, Peyton Manning is one and done in the postseason 8 times. And I find that, There's no way. I mean, these are Brady and Montana was 1 and 2, and the rest of them, other level as far as I'm concerned.
I think that look, you can't argue, Bobby, that Peyton Manning is the greatest regular season quarterback in the history of the game.
But the postseason, he's been horrible. I mean, even the second Super Bowl, the defense.
But he wasn't a good. But that's not fair. He wasn't a good quarterback anymore, right? I mean, he wasn't
in that second Super Bowl.
He wasn't that same kind of caliber quarterback in the second Super Bowl. You're right. I'm not going to argue. Joe Montana had way more postseason success than Peyton Manning.
Troy Aikman. I mean, how can he not be ahead of Dan Fouts? I know Dan Fouts has had the statistics, but
because
Troy
look
Aikman,
at
the,
you know why I think Aikman gets penalized because the teams are so good.
I mean, Dan Fouts had Joyner, Winslow, and Wes Chandler. I mean, he had a hell of a
Chuck Muncie. No, I remember those teams. And those were prolific offensive teams. And thanks to the call, Bob, you're right. But I think that Troy Aikman gets penalized because he had an elite offensive line. I mean, those Cowboys teams, and trust me, it pains me to say it, if free agency didn't start towards the end of that Cowboys run, they wouldn't have won 3. They would have won more. And Jimmy Johnson was as good a talent evaluator. I remember it all started with that Herschel Walker trade. Was as good a talent evaluator as there is in you could argue almost the history of the NFL. The players that he put on those Cowboys teams, they won 3 out of 4. That's how good they were. They took a coach that probably wasn't even a big-time coach, and they won again. If there wasn't any NFL free agency, the Cowboys would have won more than just the 3 that, in fact, they won. And Jimmy Johnson was a phenomenal talent evaluator. I'll be back tomorrow in for Stephen A. right here on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Channel 80 and the ESPN app.